Let's talk about subclasses. There's 11 new subclasses in Obojima, and if you don't know what it is, it's the Studio Ghibli-inspired campaign setting that we made over the course of the last year. So when making these subclasses, there's a guiding factor that we always took into consideration. How would this first get found in Obojima? How did it develop? Were they a farmer first that turned into something greater? Was this like a group of merchants or rogues that, had some sort of task that they would accomplish that eventually developed into this subclass that is practiced throughout the world? And so that's really where we started. We started on the ground layer and then built up for each one of these, trying to iron them and really mold them into the core of our campaign setting before we did anything else. The Belly Brewer is a group of barbarians that have figured out to hone this skill set in which they can consume any object and turn it into a concoction like a potion inside their stomach, and then use that, exert it in some capacity to alter the effects of their body or produce potion effects through their mouth and things like that. These groups of people are probably, the first of them were probably monks or chefs or farmers who found that they couldn't really satiate that inner hunger that they had, and so they experimented with other things and eventually came to the conclusion that they have this iron belly inside them that they can do a lot of things with, specifically take on these harsh ingredients and then brew something out of their stomach. They're kind of a jack of all trades in the sense, because the way our potion brewing system works, the potions are broken down into combat, utility, and whimsy. Whimsy being more the strange, magical, kind of a wild magic from standard D&D, while utility is really based on the core out-of-combat things like sneaking or interpersonal relationships, and then combat being very combat-focused, hence the name. And because of that, the Belly Brewer can tap into all three of those. The core of the Belly Brewer's abilities are their belly concoctions, which at lower levels only activate when the Barbarian are in their rage. Later, as the Belly Brewer becomes more and more potent, more powerful, and they've brewed more potions inside themselves, some of these effects become permanent and they linger after the rage. The 180 different potions that are available in Obojima, the Belly Brewer gets to pick a handful of those that they automatically access and can utilize both in and out of their rage. The next is the College of Mask Bard, which is a bard that takes on different likeness through theater masks, similar to a lot of traditional Japanese theater. Just like the Barbarian, they're incredibly versatile, but in a different way, in the sense that the Barbarian has this wide range of things that they're choosing from. The College of Masks has a lot more refined abilities, but are more potent. And also, they're allowed to switch the masks throughout combat, making them switching these kind of versatile abilities on the fly. And then later, as they continue to create masks and become more efficient with them, they can even lend masks to other characters to give them special abilities. Beyond the mask, this bard has a unique ability to copy performances and also perform to grand groups of people to manipulate them just in the way that you'd imagine a bard would, through performance and other things like that. The core of their abilities, though, comes from their masks. There's over 10 masks in total, and they stretch from strange ones like the sea urchin, which give you poison damage and allow you to heal and breathe underwater, all the way to the demon mask, which give you extra access to spells and abilities to see through illusions and walls. If you're a big fan of Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time, maybe this is the class for you to try. The next one we have is the Circle of the Petal Druid. These druids call them the petals that fall from the dawn blossom trees, which are these important, almost spiritual trees that kind of appear all throughout Obojima. And they're able to call onto these petals and manipulate them almost like water bending from Avatar, right? Where they kind of flow around you and they protect you. And then eventually you can even use them to mimic beasts and animals, and those act as companions that you summon and control throughout the battlefield. The Circle of the Petal Druid does a great job of being both offensive and defensive. The general petal wall that kind of forms around you protects yourself, but also protects allies. And then later down the line, you can even summon mass amounts of petals to separate the battlefield and create obstructions and things like that. If you want like an area control type caster, this is definitely that class. with all of the summons that you get, as well as the obstructions, and then also the defensive. It's a very well-rounded subclass. The Spirit Fused are a group of fighters that have come in contact with the spirit as it's dying. As the spirit passes on, some of its essence is trapped inside the fighter, and they become formed in this kind of like unity. And now all of these abilities and strengths and features that normally are held only to spirits are now passed on to the fighter, allowing them to whelm and enchant objects and give them these extra special abilities. Although we don't have an artificer in Obojima, this is certainly as close as you're going to get. The Spirit Fused fighter, its core is the ability to kind of take and enchant, giving extra special features to standard objects like ropes, being able to entangle people or even tape measures in that capacity, enchanting baseball bats or your weapon to deal extra force damage. And it stretches from a wide variety that you get to pick from while creating your character. Because of this subclass's desire to enchant objects, what this really does is it kind of makes a unique relationship with the random things that the fighter finds throughout the world. The Sheep Dragon Shepherd are these nomadic monks that travel along with the sheep dragon of the world, these furry, half-dragon, half-sheep creatures that have become a staple and an icon within Obojima. They're very highly regarded amongst small towns and merchants as they're protecting something that a lot of locals find sacred in some capacity, or important to the ideologies and things that they find meaningful. And so the Sheep Dragon Shepherd kind of takes on some of that responsibility as protectors. What that means for the Sheep Dragon Shepherd is they're incredibly good at getting around the battlefield and aiding their allies. It's a very utilitarian, defensive, assist type class that lets them move around and not necessarily high damage output, but certainly a lot of defenses and a lot of abilities that make sure that they can be anywhere they really want in that moment and keep enemies away or allies close. The Oath of the River Paladin are a group of warriors that have committed themselves to the tenets of the river. In Obojima, there are no gods, and so rather than finding strength and power through a deity that they connect with, they instead rely more on these powerful practices of belief through ideologies that they create in nature, like the river and the strengths and the beauty and the danger that a river produces. And that in itself, because Obojima is so steeped in magic, grants them these unique abilities. And it's through their faith in these tenets that gains these abilities. The Oath of the River Paladin is really good at crowd control, being able to move enemies closer in battle or defend their allies makes it incredibly difficult for an enemy to escape the Paladin during combat. The Corrupted Ranger are a group of people that have been infected by the corruption, this kind of dark tendrilled magic that's seeping up from the ocean and infecting the eastern side of the island of Obojima. These corrupting magics are not only killing creatures, but they're also skeletonizing them and giving this sense of false life. They're bringing monstrosities from the mud, and they're also changing spirits into demons. But they affect humanoids in a very specific way, mostly in illness. For the average person, this illness takes effect and kills them pretty quickly. But for those who are strong enough, they're able to withstand this illness. You gain some side effects that allow you to be more potent. Of all the subclasses that we built into Obojima, the Corrupted Ranger is by far the most damage-centric. As you start with this Ranger subclass, it is illness. Most of the manifestations that you gain, I gain 5 in total, are just the progression of this sickness taking hold in the Ranger's body. And as you gain these things, there are negative sides that come with it. Now, they're outweighed by the positives in D&D terms, but there's almost this chance that at the 20th level, you're gone. You know, the sickness has taken you. You are the worst you've ever been. You might be the most powerful you've ever been, but it's come with consequences. It makes for a very interesting play style. Although you're dealing a bunch of damage, it's usually at the cost of your own well-being. I wouldn't take it if you're not into this kind of idea that the class brings on, which is you're dying. To explain the Waxwork Rogue, I need to introduce you to the Postal Knights, or the Courier Brigade, which is an organization that sends and delivers mail all throughout Obojima. The Rogues, the Waxwork Rogues, were first introduced to them early on as a way to manipulate wax to protect packages and also protect allies. They have a lot of unique tricks up their sleeve that allow them to chant wax and sealing rings and candles to make effects either to get away from danger or to add a little extra damage, and because of that they're high utility with a lot of different directions you can head in. Nearly both of these pages are just the enchantments that you can pick from while playing this rogue. Things like Candle Pop, which is a huge explosion, similar to like a fireball. There's the Wick Whip, which is a long flaming whip that comes out the end of a candle. Or your Signet Rings, which allow you to press and seal doors or packages or containers and stop others from entering them. Waxlings are little familiars that you create out of candles, and they go and take care of little jobs for you until eventually they burn away and disappear. For the standard player of a rogue, it's just like any other rogue, except it's way more versatile, but less damage. You're not the assassin type. That's for sure. Oni in the world of Obojima are demons, which is pretty standard. But they're definitely feared on the island, and people have a distrust for them. So the Oni bloodline sorcerer has a unique role within the world of Obojima. So although that's not necessary, that's certainly something that this player should consider when joining in for the Oni Sorcerer. That being said, it creates a very unique playstyle, unlike many sorcerers, because the way the Oni Sorcerer works is as you lose sorcery points, as you expend them, your Oni form becomes more prominent. You'd almost think as the sorcery points as the magic that's holding your Oni form back. Things like the horns or hair or eyes or tongue of an Oni will begin to form on you, and you eventually shift from being whatever race you are, whatever ancestry you are, into a full Oni by the time you're 20th level. For example, when the Oni's tongue is manifested, when you cast a spell that includes a verbal component, creatures targeted by that spell also succumb to fear. Unlike the Spirit Fuse, where their abilities are all about enchanting objects and kind of taking in some of the core tenets or core abilities that a spirit might have, the Warlock or the Pact of the Lantern instead makes a deal to gain power from a spirit. Now, it's not even necessarily a powerful spirit, but just a spirit in general, something that they've connected with. And now that spirit is the essence that illuminates their lantern, and all of their abilities come from the illumination of their lantern. And eventually your lantern kind of floats next to you almost like a spiritual weapon that you can control and kind of move out into the battlefield, meaning that you can manipulate and shift your aura out, causing different effects for your allies and the enemies. In all light in D&D, there's the dim light and there's the bright light. And so what we've done is made the bright light and the dim light cause different effects, meaning that you can have two different abilities all activating at the same time, positives for your allies, negatives for your enemies, and being able to switch them on the fly. The last of the subclasses is the Origami Mage. This is our wizard subclass, and they have honed their abilities in the art of origami, folding, papercraft. This subclass is another buffing and support style class. Their way their origami familiars work is when you've crafted one, you go and place it on a creature, an ally or an enemy nearby. The origami familiar hovers around them and kind of acts and stays in their space. And while on them, gives them a specific buff, either a positive or a negative, depending on whether it's an ally or an enemy. Picking the form of your origami familiar is important, and each one gives a different buff, like the crab or the bird or the cat, which give damaging, defensive, or utility-based bonuses. Beyond those core abilities, you do get upgraded standard familiars as well, and unseen servants, which you can craft out of paper. Now, in addition to the basic abilities that all of those things get, your origami versions are enhanced to the nth degree with a lot of special, unique features that only the Origami Mage gets. If you noticed while hearing me explain all of these that there's a theme, and the theme is mostly versatility and a lot of options. I love subclasses that give you a lot of options. It's the reason that all of these kind of have a wide variety here. I think it's more interesting for you to pick the class and then hone in what this class is to you, making it unique every time. If you're not very experienced and you've never really played D&D before, I would certainly recommend playing something like the Oath of the River Paladin or the Corrupted Ranger, as they're a little more straightforward. If you're wanting something super versatile, nothing gives you more options than the Belly Brewer Barbarian or the Waxwork Rogue. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a little bit more. If you want to check out Obojima, you can click the link in our bio to go and look at more information about it, or even buy the PDF or the book. At this point in time, it's either a pre-order or you can straight up just purchase it. I have no idea. But the links are in the bio. You can also check out other videos talking about Obojima, or our podcast where we write Obojima with Adam Lee and Ari Levitch, the other writers, which is a great time. And if you just want assistance as a GM to like get some ideas flowing, it's a great place to stop by. Thanks for watching, and here's some music.